You're listening to The Re-Engineered You. This is a podcast about self-empowerment and all the myths, lies, and misconceptions we tell ourselves. Then we use science and history to bust those myths and re-engineer a better you. Self-awareness should be a daily practice, sort of like living in the now, taking stock in your values, and researching the latest information about consciousness and mental health. So here's some bonus brain-stretching facts, updates, and corrections to some of our favorite past episodes. It's our pleasure to bring them to your ears.
For our updates today, can we get, I know we're an education podcast. Can we dig into celebrities? I want to get gossip column-y.
Okay. Rich, famous people, yes.
Rich, famous people. Can we start with, these episodes went back to back, so can we do a little bit something about Berry Gordy and Motown?
Berry Gordy, the co-founder of Motown, along with Smokey Robinson, worth about $400 million and creating a whole genre of music. So yes.
Creating an entire generation of people, listening to Motown's catalog during this episode, I was like, holy heck, they defined culture for us for a generation.
Yeah, the Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. Goes on and on. But what this episode was about was, can you have creative competition? And you being a writer and being a competitive writer, what's your take on that?
You need creative competition. You need to look across the table and have somebody that you're competing against in a very friendly, loving way. You don't want to crush them. You want them to help point out your flaws.
And Berry Gordy took this one step further. He was in Detroit, and he'd worked at the Ford Motor Plant. So he said, for creating music, we're going to run it just like the Ford plant. We're going to have writers write. We're going to have musicians play. We're going to have singers sing. Everyone's going to do just what they're good at. And if the song doesn't work for Michael Jackson, we're going to send it down the line to Stevie Wonder.
And that's why you can hear so many Motown songs covered by so many Motown artists until it got to the magic combination.
They got more and more creative competition going, and they were just manufacturing hit after hit. And all the other record companies who'd been at longer with more resources, the so-called experts, couldn't catch up.
Right. So our news today, Berry Gordy's being honored.
Another award? Shouldn't the $500 million be enough?
You would think so. Berry Gordy is being honored at the Kennedy Center Honors. And he's being honored along great people. Like he's being honored along Bette Midler and Lorne Michaels. So it's, his name is up on the board.
Well deserved.
Can we keep the celebrity train rolling a bit? Because I like gossip.
Okay, who do you got?
So Eminem was in the news recently, and we had an entire episode about the time Eminem had never heard of internet porn. This came from our episode 35, which was about Eminem and celebrity insulation. And the episode posited that once celebrities get enough money and fame, and they have enough people doing their interactions for them, like once they don't have to talk to the public and they pull a Zuckerberg where they buy up a neighborhood and they make that neighborhood a literal barrier between them and their own house. I mean, like, there were celebrities that had like literal shops put into their basement so they didn't have to shop at malls anymore and weird stuff like that.
Barbara Streisand has her own mall in her basement of her house just for her.
Yeah.
We also talked about Warren Buffett, who everyone says, well, he's just like me. He lives in a 1,500 square foot house in Nebraska. His life is nothing like yours. He doesn't live in that house. He flies on jets, has food chewed for him, spit into his mouth. Don't fool yourself. That's just press.
Right.
And along with being insulated, also becomes being calloused.
Absolutely. Yeah. We hearkened back to episodes about how wealth calluses you, how it makes you out of touch, how it means that you don't even process information and social cues the same way. You no longer see other people's values as being valuable. It was such a eye-opening episode. I think at the end we mentioned that, how the hell are we taking these people's advice on Twitter about what we should vote on? Because all these celebrities weigh in on like politics. All of them are like, it's my responsibility to use my platform to tell you who to vote for. But these are people who haven't paid medical bills in a long time, or they have, but it's,
no, the doctor comes to them. Joe, this is a different life than this. They don't buy their own food. He's like, oh, they have help that goes out. No, their food's given to them. Every single clothes they wear is given to them by the most expensive designer.
That's right. We had a Vulture article that was like, these people, get so much free stuff that they haven't had to buy clothes in forever. So I found 2 great updates for us. Eminem opened a shop. He opened his own restaurant called Mom Spaghetti, based on that hilarious 8 Mile rap line, Mom Spaghetti. And he worked the drive-through.
Oh, man, I would have loved to go through there, man.
There are pictures online, and I tell you, you got to see it. Him in a hoodie, looking... I mean, like, he looks miserable to my eyes, but then I realize it's probably just him, playing the part. But yeah, he is serving spaghetti out a restaurant drive-through window in the drive-through. It's incredible.
Joe and I both big fans of his.
Yeah, I hope that came through in the episode when we talked about.
I don't think it did. I think we kind of badmouthed him for being a homophobe and.
Yeah. Despite all of that being surrounded by controversy, I actually like Eminem. Okay, so when we talk about celebrity insulation, though, like on the grander scale, CNN had a fantastic article come out that really, really backed up what we talked about. We did that celebrity insulation episode before COVID made all these celebrities look like idiots. The New York Post put out an article titled, 2020 Taught Us One Thing, Celebrities Are Meaningless. And they mention in here, okay, out of my sort of reading, I was like, yes, I'm on board, because Gwyneth Paltrow was selling anti-COVID garbage from her shop Goop, like using holistic healing to tell people that they could get rid of COVID. Nicki Minaj started posting about how, vaccines made cousins' testicles become, overlarge and sterile. Like, I don't remember exactly what it said, but just nonsense. Just everything celebrities tweeted this year about COVID was utter garbage.
But what about them being locked in their 12,000 square foot houses with movie theaters, sports arenas, everything brought to them? For fuck's sake, Joe.
Yeah. I love that your mind went the same direction as this New York Post writer. This is an article by Maureen Callahan, and she says the exact same thing. She says, please read her article. We're going to link to it. She says, quote, the list goes on. Madonna whining that COVID was the great equalizer from her rose-petaled bathtub. David Geffen's super yacht selfie. Ellen DeGeneres broadcasting from her gorgeous estate. A wall of greenery behind her floor-to-ceiling windows, complaining that quarantine was like being in jail. Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas staged and incensed paparazzi walks during lockdown. Arnold Schwarzenegger in a hot tub puffing on a cigar while his, with his mini ponies. Did you see that video? I missed that.
Did.
Mini ponies?
The cigar thing. You talk about someone's lost touch with reality. He's been famous for way too long.
Right. Chrissy Teigen and Kardashians and luxury travel. And then she says, continues to say, still now as numbers spike and ICUs verge on overflow. I don't want a plague to vindicate that episode we did to make us feel like we were on, dead on. I feel like we were dead on. So let's get away from me feeling pleased with ourselves and, bashing celebrities.
Yeah, I'm sure we swung and missed sometimes too. We've said some pretty dumb shit.
I make it a point to say something wrong every episode. So we get feedback sometimes. I think most feedback I've gotten is my pronunciation on cities and states. Let's move a little bit away from celebrities. Let's move into the field of making ourselves into celebrities, or not celebrities, but self-promotion.
Self-help, self-promotion, being your best self. And being your best self, we did an article and we did an episode about who is the biggest, most shameless self-promoter ever. And Joe came up with the daredevil himself, Evel Knievel.
Evel Knievel.
This man was willing to break every bone in his body for fame and fortune. And this is somebody we can learn from. And I'm in sales, and I think now in the community of careers now, we're promoting ourselves. You almost have to have your own brand on LinkedIn. You have to do your own podcast. You have to do your own YouTube videos to promote that you're an expert in your field.
That's right. And if you're good at it, people assume if you're good at something, that's enough for you to get paid and to get recognized. Evel Knievel proves that's not true. Evel Knievel landed his motorcycle on jumps more often than the best pickers in Wall Street pick stocks, more often than the best shooters in the NBA shoot shots. He was so accurate and so good, and yet most of his career was around promoting that precision that he had.
And believe it or not, all you Evel Knievel fans, and I'm one too, a lot of his stuff that he said was broken wasn't.
Right. A lot of his self-promotion was aggrandized, self-mythologized. BS is the technical term.
Pretending to be in a coma when he wasn't. You
Right.
got to listen to the episode. It's absolutely awesome. But on the promotion thing, I think men are more boastful. I'm the best in my business, right?
Even if it's true, like that is something we talked about in the article, is if you self-promote yourself, it can be a really positive thing if it is truthful.
Tell me about what you found this Forbes article about women and self-promotion.
So in the self-promotion episode, we found that women were less likely to brag about their actual accomplishments. And there was you'll have to go back and listen to the episode, but we found studies about how women were more accurate while working as individual or independent brokers on Wall Street. Their predictions were better. They had a better track record if you're just talking gender differences.
Their stats were better in the money business, which should be cut or dry. If you make me more money, I want to use you.
Right. But they found out that their hiring was worse because they did not feel like promoting themselves as much. They didn't want to brag. They didn't want to aggrandize or mythologize their accomplishments.
And I forgot what it was, but on applying for a job, women feel like they have to hit 90% to 100% of the checks on the job description, and men feel like we should be about 30%.
Right.
I can do all this thing, or I can learn. I've done this before.
Yeah, men are like, I can do most of the one thing they look for, as the largest trait. Everything else I can learn or make up as I go. So this was a Forbes article, and this was entitled The Soul-Crushing Truth About Women and Self-Promotion, and this is by Joe Miller, who is, it's a great article, and it is also in 7-minute podcast form, so follow our link and go read that. It's really good. But they say that 240 leaders of Silicon Valley tech company were asked to name the factors that got them promoted. And it wasn't professional expertise. Almost all of them talked about visibility being the most important factor. This article goes on and gives studies and quotes and talks about, the importance of self-promotion. But the most important takeaway here is self-promotion is important for everybody. Truthful self-promotion separates you from the rest of the pack, especially when it comes to hiring practices. If you want to get hired, be honest and be willing to say that you took a role in the team that succeeded. But specifically, this study is talking about how amazingly women do in higher fields when they self-promote. Again, in an honest and meaningful way. But yeah, I love this article. Like it hits most of the our end lesson that we barely touched in that episode. This article is a nice cherry on top of that. It's a really good read. In part one, we talked about how exercise is the more important component to health rather than weight loss. Do you want to hear another really good reason to go for a walk and get some exercise?
Better not be emotional intelligence.
It's, by the way, the higher pitch you go to when you're contemplating, it's the less believable you're about to say. that sound I made, only dogs could hear it.
I was going to say, it's a pretty high note.
Yeah.
Soprano.
This does touch on emotional intelligence just a bit. This is actually more about self-awareness and rejection and getting over negative feelings, really. Do you remember our episode about granularity, emotional granularity?
I do, and this one was useful for me in my day-to-day, being over-emotional and acting and lashing out before I have a time to process and digest what something means. Getting granular about my emotions and saying, why do I feel this? Why am I angry? It's easy to get monkey mad so fast.
That is a good way to put it. I think this episode for me changed the way I thought of what we were doing as a podcast, as an education source. Once we touched on emotional granularity, I was like, oh, you said it best. After this episode, you came back and you're like, we are a self-awareness podcast. And I thought that was such a great insight.
As far as getting granular about things, am I mad because I'm insecure? Where in my past does this happen? And just getting it down to just putting it into a word, putting it in a box and identifying it.
Literally grab a thesaurus. All the studies over and over again have sort of found that one of the greatest tools to emotional health, really just possibly a fix to psychology across the board, touching several disciplines, is being able to identify how you feel and then working with it from there. There's something called the emotional wheel or the emotional color wheel. If you look it up, it touches on, the 5 basic feelings, which is where most people stop, which is angry, sad, happy, the real basics. If you say, how do you feel? And you're like, well, I'm angry. That is not enough. To get granular, it divides into subsections. It's I'm disappointed. And then why are you disappointed? Well, I'm hurt because somebody disappointed me.
I wasn't included.
Yes.
Has this happened before in my life, and why? Did this happen a long time ago? And I never really got over it.
Right. I feel frustrated. So, the more granular you get, the moment you identify the exact emotion you're feeling and where it came from, you already have a plan. Like our brains are built to sort of form a plan, form a goal, make the steps. So the moment you figure out exactly why you're feeling bad or good, you'll have a plan. Well, this comes from this is a study supported by the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute from Northeastern University. And this is in partial fulfillment to a doctorate in philosophy degree in psychology awarded to Katie Homan. So congratulations, Katie. This was a great study, came out this year. Basically, it talks about how granularity was positively correlated with the number of clusters of cardiorespiratory physiological activity. To put that in another term, we will have a link to this, by the way, so you can go read this. Basically, that means if you're exercising, the way the vagal nerve works, the way, respiratory and sinus arrhythmia work, the way the heart works. If you go out and walk or run or get exercise, get your circulatory moving, people who did this study were able to identify their own emotions quicker, easier, more effectively. So literally, if you're having trouble figuring out exactly how you feel, that thesaurus or that emotional color wheel isn't working, go take a brisk walk.
And I think that's the anger management thing that I've heard.
It totally is. Have you ever had personal revelations while you're exercising?
I've gotten clarity.
You've gotten clarity.
Yeah, and I used to be very involved. I just still go twice a week, but I was in a yoga class every night, and I would take a meditation class, and when you get out of even a yoga class, your meditation state and your endorphins are up, and you can really see things probably more the way they are than when you came in all bent and twisted up about them.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned yoga, because I have a note in here in our episode list, and I have a question, which is maybe this is why extreme meditation, like, the classic vision of a monk meditating under a waterfall, maybe that actually is what leads to personal enlightenment. It might be a tie between, emotional granularity and the strain, getting their cardiorespiratory system working and being able to identify what they feel and why.
Well, anyone who's therapied themselves through trauma, addiction, always meditation is at the top of the list. It's something they started to practice and do daily.
Right. And it always comes back to the question, why am I feeling this?
Joe and I both write speeches. We're both public speakers. And one of the ones that just always gets under my skin, I don't know if it bothers you, it's the old Colonel Sanders thing. Right, Joe? You ever the old Colonel Sanders? It's never too late. Look at Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, 80-something, failed a bunch of stuff.
Right, failed his whole life.
Spices.
And I think that makes us a false sense of we have a lot more time than we do, because we don't know how long we're going to live anyways.
Right.
So we did an episode about a fad, a disco fad, and the biggest disco band of all time, the Bee Gees. And the end of the episode was about recognizing our prime. Do you remember that episode?
That is one of my absolute favorite episodes. I wrote a letter to somebody who was having sort of they're young and they're having a bit of a mental crisis. And I wrote them this information before we wrote the episode. It was, it's not too late. Most people don't hit their primes until way late in life. We found great information from the Washington Post and Nobel Prizes. And we found out that everybody creatively is well into their late 30s and mid 40s before they become creatively successful. And, even with sports, people, unless you're in a very highly specific sport that you have to peak early, like gymnastics, everybody else, you do get better and more efficient with age. The only one I felt a little bit shaky on, we did manage to find articles from insurance companies saying that, insurance and brokerages saying that young people do not have their finances together, and that people generally don't hit their financial prime until way later in life than I thought. I thought we were supposed to be moved out and independent at age 21 or right after college, and it was not true at all.
Yeah, we thought that your prime was what? We thought your prime is probably when you're still young and powerful, maybe in your early 30s, when your education, your income goes up, but it's much, much later.
I figured it was going to be like a 35-year-old, by 35 you should be wearing a suit and tie and being a power broker, power lawyer, and whatever.
Well, there's an article out, a new thing out on recognizing your prime, and it's a CNBC article. And you don't really get any net worth as an American until you're 45 to 54, Joe. So you got a ways to go. It's okay to be broke now if you are.
Okay.
I have a feeling Joe may have saved $1 billion buried somewhere.
I spent all of that on classes that I didn't need. So now, if I'm looking at this graph correctly, they give the average net worth and the median net worth. We're going off the median, right? Because
the average is skewed.
Because a billionaire sitting next to 10 peasants.
I'll give you an example. I lived in Seattle, and it was a waterfront area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they would put businesses in based on the median. But there were a couple of Microsoft billionaires in that zip code that didn't even live there.
Okay.
So it was actually a poverty area. So point being, we do median.
Okay. So if I am under 35, what is my median net worth? Net worth meaning all my money in the bank, all my assets. how much am I supposed to be worth before I'm 35?
A whopping 13 grand.
Are you shitting me?
A used car.
Oh my God. I have things to tell to all of my friends who are under 35. If I tell all of them that their net worth, the median net worth of an American right now of their age is a used car, I'm afraid they'll stop trying. I almost don't want to share this news.
Well, that's people who've been working probably for at least 15 years.
Right. That's true, yeah.
You think they have a lot? Shit.
So from this graph, is there a wealth prime? Like is there what's the best time in your life to have a high net worth?
It peaks and then starts heading down because I'm sure from health things and health expenses, 65 to 74.
Literally retirement.
Yeah.
God, okay. Oh, okay. Did I ever tell you about the British economist that gave a great Royal Academy speech about pensioners?
No, never heard that.
Okay. Actually, before I mention that, let's get a couple of these numbers out. 35 to 44. How much is my median worth supposed to be?
$91,000, and then 45 to 54, $168,000. And then you see it's trending up as we're getting older, more established in our careers, more niche in our businesses, right? More valuable. 55 to 65, 212,000. 65 to 74, the peak, 266K. And then we're heading back down.
Todd and I live in the Portland metro area. So like our peak net worth is about the same as a house in the Portland area. So like your total net worth will probably as an American not exceed the cost of a house.
So you're not going to have anything.
So insane to me.
Right? If that's
okay, that is what it means. Yeah. I was listening to a really great presentation by somebody who was giving a speech for the Royal Institute, and he was saying that Britain is having the same problem we're having, which is baby boomers who are now pensioners. They call the retired people there pensioners because they're drawing a pension. They have enough money. By the way, pensioner used to mean poor person in Britain. Like the word pensioner was synonymous with an older person who didn't have enough money to live on because they were historically poor. The pensioners now have boomers have arrived into their pensioner years with enough wealth and money that they are, most of them, buying second houses instead of having the millennial generation buy their first house. So the houses and the housing market is closing tighter, even more than millennials were. Millennials were already in Britain, like they weren't going to be able to buy a house.
So the more established, older people, generational money is hoarding up the houses.
They are buying second houses and renting them to the millennials who weren't able to get them in time.
Mm-hmm.
So
they missed out. They're buying. It's too late.
So this presenter was like, the way we solve this is we have a tax gift to millennials. Once anyone reaches a certain age, we just give them $10,000. And it doesn't seem like much to you and me, like if you're older, but it means everything to a millennial. And now that I'm looking at this graph, seeing that the median net worth of somebody younger than 35 is $13,000, that almost doubles their median net worth if they were to reach 20 and get that 10K.
It's a big kick.
It
it's
is
a boost.
That is the start of their savings to buy a house. The house that we can only barely ever afford once we get to 65. Todd, have I ever told you that sometimes I hate doing this episode or doing this podcast and being right?
Anytime we get into social class and wealth, Joe gets a little squirming, angry.
He sees me melt like a snowman.
The vein sticks out of his forehead.
I thought the makeup was hiding that vein. Do you want to continue talking a little bit about class? I'll keep it short so I don't explode, but want to get into news about Amazon?
Yes, and my favorite subject is wage theft.
Yes. We did a double episode about Amazon and wage theft. And one of the absolute favorite facts, we've literally gotten feedback by people, like friends and family who have listened to the show, saying that they couldn't believe the fact about how Amazon workers in some factories, the box movers, have a higher injury rate than steel mills.
They do. Than steel mills or logging, wood mills,
right?
Lumber mills. Okay, this is a couple quick facts about Amazon. There's people who got out of prison who'd rather go back to prison than work at Amazon.
That was from the Long Island Amazon box, the wish fulfillment warehouse, and the prisoners were like, "I'd rather do time."
Pregnant women who weren't allowed to go to the bathroom because there just wasn't time.
People fainting near the loading belts.
People wanting just their 15-minute breaks or have to sleep and rest on the conveyor belt because it takes 20 minutes to walk back to the break room. Very reasonable things. They want to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
They want it to be better than prison.
Well, do you want to hear how it's gotten slightly worse for Amazon since we did that episode?
Worse?
Yes. So they looked at their factory of people they were treating like robots, and they were looking at how they have these tags on their wrist or these personal computers that tell them when they shouldn't be acting human, like you're resting too long, you're taking micro breaks, you use the bathroom, how dare you? They extended this. They're like, how do we take our reign of terror and branch it out farther to our drivers? So there was an article that came out last week. This is CNBC. Amazon Mentor app tracks and disciplines delivery drivers specifically for looking away from the camera when other people cut them off and for having to take a piss in bottles because they can't get out and use the restroom.
So they get in trouble because they're trying to keep up.
Yeah, they lose their end of week bonuses if they don't act without humanity. If they have to check other drivers who are cutting them off or use the restroom, they are being penalized.
That's just horrible. Isn't this episode where people like in the fast food sector are just like, we're done. We're
done.
Closed.
Okay, so yes, that is exactly what it reminds me of. That's why Amazon, in that episode, we talked about how Amazon found and set the standard for the wage that would keep people locked into their job the longest, a job that will literally injure you.
To the cent. If they charge they charge $1 less an hour, everybody quits. But they figured out the breaking point.
Exactly. Yeah, they found out the perfect sweet spot, and it was algorithm found. Basically, it was $15 an hour plus benefits means that they wouldn't lose their labor force. And they specifically set up warehouses in impoverished areas, so they have a labor force. So the pyramids come to the workers. They're trying to make this even more efficient. This month, actually, Business Insider had an article about this, but this has been all over the news. Amazon labor towns. So during lockdown, during COVID, during this... basically during this period where everybody's getting desperate, Amazon used this desperation to announce they're setting up, now they called them factory towns. And the article we're linking to is just giving such a glowing review for Amazon setting up mining towns version 2.0. Business Insider calls their rapid expansion a chance to create a better economy for working class Americans. They say they're opening up an additional 125,000 jobs in September alone. And they're saying that they are bringing up price again. They're bringing their minimum hiring from Amazon from $15 up to $18. Now, they're treating this like they're inventing something new, like Amazon is doing something that has not been tried since the Ford. They literally, in this article, call it the Michigan Ford and General Motors and Chrysler towns that got set up. And they say the ones that molded the United States. But honestly, when that industry leaves, it never leaves those towns intact. Just look at Detroit. But something else that I want to point out, and this is a personal bone to pick. This is my theory, no one else's. Blame me if this is wrong. But the moment Amazon opens Amazon stores in their quote-unquote factory towns, or even worse, if they put up Amazon-branded homes. Did you know you can buy small homes on Amazon?
No, I didn't. I did not know that. But I know where you're going with this. This sounds like indentured servants. This sounds like Hershey, Pennsylvania, where they're going to force you to work for a lower wage to just live.
Yep. Yeah, you can buy small cabins on Amazon, by the way. But yeah, once Amazon can set the prices of the goods available in these low-class labor towns, once they can charge rent for the Amazon houses, this isn't a factory town. This is a mining and train town where unscrupulous employers basically become slave owners over their laborers. If they charge more for rent or more for food, or not even more, if they just charge an amount that means that they have less money at the end of each month, they lock them into those towns.
And they'll never be able to move. They'll never be able to save. This reminds me of those mining towns in the Southeast.
That's exactly what this is. If you are a mine owner, then you should also be a neighborhood owner. You should also be a town or a store owner. Because if you own the workplace, the home, and the store, you set the price on everything, and you have absolute control over the monthly money flow of every single laborer under you. Amazon is being, quote unquote, highly innovative in doing this all over again in America. To get on a slightly lighter subject, we had an episode, number 48, was all about love. Now, this episode can't possibly be an update on the extremely old couple. The story was we had somebody who had dug a set of stairs up a mountain that was so hand chiseled out of stone and looked so primitive. People who found it thought they were stumbling upon an archaeological dig. And then when they followed it to the top, they thought they were going to find like a stone temple. And they found this old elderly couple who just loved the hell out of each other.
Mm-hmm. And it was a true story. It ended up being the Chinese movie of the year, love story of the year.
Love story of the year. Yeah. That was such a great episode.
Well, there's a new thing in love now, and it's a new thing out. And it's why are so many single women trying love coaching?
Love coaching.
Love coaching is an industry that is absolutely blown up, and the customer, the number one buying customer, is 30-something women in search of a partner. Now, these coaches, these experts, some of them who just came out of messy divorces, some of them who don't have a significant other,
right,
are
Todd
promising.
is using air quotes that nobody can see, but I will tell you about it.
I always do that. But even when they don't have a guarantee, the simple action of hiring a coach, taking action, is making these women happier.
Okay. So I guess this is a silly question, but why do 30-something educated women need a coach to motivate them to find men? Isn't that something, I mean, I assume that's what they're trying to do already?
It is. There's a lot of moving parts on this. And what's happening is a lot of men are not going to college. There's less, I guess you could say, inventory. There's less men going to college, less men going to university. And the toxic social dating between Instagram, Facebook, and, of course, all the dating sites, Match, Tinder, is making it very, very, very hard for someone to find something who's serious about it and serious about a relationship is getting muddled up in all that water.
Okay.
Now, how big of an industry do you think this is, Joe?
I was going to go low. I was going to say that it was kind of like, what do you call it? Hitch, like matchmakers. But then I remembered very briefly that we're living in the internet age and that this is probably way bigger than I would ever assume.
Well, these one-on-one dating coaches charge $8,000 a month.
Per person.
Per person. That's all one-on-one. So that's for you to get a specialist. So these must be high earners.
I'm not going to do this, but I want to put in the sound of a record scratch into this episode, and then the next episode starts with you and I, the re-engineered dating coaches, and it's us doing this. Like, we're just abandon everything. We strictly go with one-on-one coaching for dating.
Well, I was reading about some of these seminar leading coaches, some of the ones. It's a $1 billion industry, and so a lot of them who are going through messy, very public divorces will say, "Hey, look, I screwed up my marriage. I know all the mistakes to make. I can help you avoid these landmines."
That's a great promotional tool if you yourself look like you screwed up a relationship. Does this have any credibility whatsoever? Or does this just seem like, are these people certified, or is it just hucksters out there being like, I can hook you up with a dude?
There's certifications, and then I think there's hucksters that are selling certifications too.
Okay.
And say, hey, I'm an expert at setting people up, and they do. It's not psychology; it's life coaches, and we've studied some of that in some of our episodes.
Okay. We had a self-help episode where we talked about self-help gurus and how toxic they can be. But one of the ones that we did find where there are some coaching federations that actually are kind of mostly reputable, that you can get certifications that businesses will. They will recognize and they will want to hire you. So that's not to say all self-help coaching is bunk. We just assume it's bunk until somebody shows us their paperwork. I don't want to be the one that ends our episode on a major downer. But do you mind if we talk about the thing that is hitting the news today and that seems like it's going to be far rippling in the future for us? Do you want to talk about compassion fatigue?
Yes, and being calloused.
Okay.
And the time we're in right now, we're watching hospitals filled up and certain people being sent away because you have a cancer treatment schedule. We can't give you a bed because we have people with COVID in here.
Right. When we first wrote this episode, we did not know COVID would be as big as it is or that it was on the horizon. We originally wrote an episode called General Grant and Compassion Fatigue. And it was all about how this sort of brutal war general...
Known as the Butcher,
who was a drinker, who had every reason, like he was poor most of his life. He was punishing generals who came from wealthy families and, educated backgrounds. He showed up to the table to negotiate with Robert E. Lee, basically in a muddy uniform. Robert E. Lee came in a pressed, neat uniform. This man had every reason to not have compassion for the enemy.
Yeah, the day before, these men were trying to kill each other. Them men were trying to kill one another.
Right. And then we compared the level of compassion he showed to how much compassion our political parties had for each other about a year ago. When we wrote this episode, it was the New York Times and Washington Post had started talking about compassion fatigue. They were like, people on the political spectrum are running out of compassion for all these heartbreaking things going on. We had people getting sick. We had people put in cages. We had people who were needing asylum. We had people that needed assistance from the government because they were out of money. At the time, we just wanted to talk about how compassion fatigue works, how in news articles, if the number of people who are in a story exceed 1, you start running out of compassion. Stories work best when it is one person being affected and you can just sympathize with them.
One story, one daughter or son or wife or husband.
Yeah, exactly. When you start getting to bigger and bigger numbers, the larger the number, the less we have compassion for it. When you talk about 100,000 dead people somewhere, my compassion needle goes to 0. I can't. Most people can't.
It seems like it should be the opposite. The bigger the school shooting, the bigger the disease that kills, you would think that just would hit your heart harder and harder and harder.
You would think the way the human brain works, that we would internalize danger more with the more people are affected. It's the opposite. This is showing up, unfortunately, in nursing and doctoring. According to this article, this came out of I'm going to link to a blog instead of the major. There's a CNBC article, and there's also a blog article I'm going to link to that has a really good series of studies that they quote. The CNBC one is called COVID is Driving an Exodus Among Healthcare Workers. The blog is Diversity Nursing. We're going to link to both of them. But what this is about is 16 to 39% of nurses have fatigue about COVID patients who didn't get vaxxed. 3 in 10 healthcare workers across the board have already left or they're leaving by the end of this year. So we're looking at a time when we need, before COVID, we needed healthcare workers dearly. Because there are more boomers than there are any other generation by numbers, people are getting older, and we have a lopsided population where there are more older people in the top than there are younger people in the bottom. They're reaching retirement. They're needing nurses. They're needing doctors. They are reaching an age where they need that help. Meanwhile, those doctors who were already getting burnt out, who were being limited to seeing each patient for less than 20 minutes. Now it's less than 10 minutes. And now it's less than 10 minutes per patient, and there's a plague going on. There's a pandemic that they have to deal with. And not only that, we have politicized a scientific event, like a viral event. So now those doctors who were already burning out, who are already becoming disillusioned with how many people they have to see per day, now they're dealing with an epidemic where half the people who come in to get treated didn't believe in the thing they're getting treated for. This is being upheld by the studies. In April, a study found that healthcare marketplace, 4 in 10, so that's 43% of nurses, were going to leave in 2021. It's higher among ICU workers, 48%. So half of the workers working in emergency medicine are planning to leave.
Frightening.
Same thing with Britain. A recent report by the British Medical Association found that thousands of UK doctors were leaving the health services altogether. They're just leaving health after the pandemic because of exhaustion and mental health. Again, this all they state in their thing, in their article, they mention staff shortages, emotional toll of frontline medical workers, health systems that have been chipped away over the years. At the beginning of the pandemic, it came to light that we didn't have enough medical equipment, we didn't have enough ventilators, we didn't have enough beds, we didn't have enough of anything in hospitals to take care of anything this large. Part of the reason why is because when you get a medical bill, so much of it goes to insurance and billing, and so few of it actually trickles down to doctors and beds. If you want to look at what we're spending our money on, well, I'm gonna leave you with this, if it's okay. People want to say, how the hell are medical bills so high, yet hospitals are underfunded, and we can't afford doctors who can spend more than 10 minutes per patient? Todd health insurance companies are doing so good right now, as in they have literally been doubling their profit this last year. Medical billing and insurance companies got over their cap. I don't know if you know this, but they're only allowed to make so much money because of the way Obamacare was structured. So the idea was everyone was mandated to buy insurance, right? Every insurance company was limited on how much they could make. They were like, okay, if all of the public simultaneously pays you for health insurance, if you make more than what you should in a year, you kick that back to either the hospital or the public. And insurance companies were supposed to do that. Guess what?
They haven't done it yet?
They haven't done it yet.
Like a rebate?
Like a rebate, exactly. It's like a tax rebate. It's like you gave too much in taxes in a year, well, then your state is supposed to kick back your taxes. These health insurance companies, some of them are into quadruple profits after they were being mandated that everyone have insurance. This did not go away when Obamacare ended. People still kept their insurance. But the New York Times has an article from last year that talks about how the insurance profits are quadrupled to doubled, depending on the company, and none of them have given rebates.
Doesn't make sense. With 1 million people dying, you think they'd be losing money.
What makes me even more infuriated is with all this burnout among clinicians, among half of ICU nurses leaving, among doctors leaving, these companies, some of them started the pandemic by saying, we will cover COVID costs, for our patients who get sick, even though it's not strictly worded that way in our hyper small print. A lot of them are revoking that. So not only had they made double and quadruple profits last year, not only are we due for a rebate from them, a lot of them are revoking the good grace coverage they were going to extend for COVID. A lot of them are saying, no, we want the money still.
You've been listening to The Re-Engineered You. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You mean the world to us.
You can connect with us at www.re-engineeredyou.com. That's where we have research links, show notes, and blog articles for each of our episodes. We also appreciate feedback, and we love spirited debates.
We have a new episode every week. We're not experts in anything, but we've got an opinion on everything.